$40 a pound for a weed. A plain little weed that is most likely growing in the cool shade behind your house this very minute. You have walked past it 100 times. You called it nothing. You may have pulled it and tossed it on the brush pile. And the whole time, it was worth more by the ounce than the beef in your freezer. I am going to tell you what it is. I am going to tell you how my people have gathered it for over 200 years. And I am going to tell you why it is against the law to dig it in roughly a dozen states, when in others a quiet old man with a canvas sack can turn an afternoon walk into a season's worth of grocery money. But first, hear this plain. The reason most folks have never heard of this is not an accident. There is a whole industry that takes this very plant, dries it, grinds it, puts it in a little capsule, and sells it back to you for $40, $50, sometimes $80 a bottle. They have no reason on earth to tell you it grows wild and free in the woods at the edge of your own yard. None. My grandfather knew it. His grandfather knew it. We never needed the bottle because we had the woods. I was raised plain in Holmes County, Ohio. No car in the drive, no wires running to the house. And when I was a boy, maybe 9 years old, my grandfather would take me out on the north slope behind our back 40 in the first cool week of September, when the air finally lost its sticky weight. He carried a forked digging stick worn smooth as bone. He never rushed. He would stop, point a thick finger at the ground, and say one word, "There." And I would look, and at first I would see nothing but leaves. Then my eyes would learn, and there it stood. That memory is worth more to me now than I knew then. So, before I go one step further, do me a small kindness. Drop your state in the comments. Just the state. Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, wherever you sit watching this. Because where you live decides everything about what I am about to teach you. And near the middle of this, I am going to show you exactly how to tell in about 10 seconds whether the plant in front of you is worth $4 or $40. The way my grandfather showed me with that worn old stick. Stay with me for that part. It is the one thing the supplement companies pray you never learn. Now let me tell you what this plant actually is. It is American ginseng, Panax quinquefolius, if you want the book name. But where I come from, we just called it sang. Say it like that, sang. The old diggers, the mountain folk, the plain people, we have all called it that for longer than this country has been a country. And here is the part that stops people cold. This is not some rare jungle herb from the far side of the world. It is a native plant. It belongs here. It grew in these eastern woods long before the first wagon came over the mountains. It grows from Quebec down to Georgia, west into Missouri and Arkansas, all through the Appalachians, across Ohio and Pennsylvania and Indiana. It likely grows within a short walk of where you are sitting if you have any kind of older hardwood shade on your land. People hear $40 a pound and they think you must need a greenhouse or special seed or some trick only a farmer knows. No, the plant does the work itself. It has been doing it quietly in the leaf litter for thousands of years, asking nothing from anybody. Let me agitate something for you, because I want you to feel the size of what has been taken. Walk into any pharmacy. Walk into any of those big health stores with the bright lights and the long aisles. Go to the shelf with the energy supplements, the ones that promise to help an older body feel less tired, sharpen the mind a little, steady the nerves. Pick up the bottle that says ginseng on the front, turn it over, look at the price, $40, sometimes more, for a little bottle of powder, and that powder, more often than not, is the cheap farmed Asian kind, grown fast undercloth, packed with so little of the real strength that you would need a fistful to feel a thing. The good kind, the American wild kind, the kind that grows slow in your own woods, is so prized that buyers ship nearly all of it overseas before you ever get a chance to see it. So here sits the older American homeowner, tired, watching every dollar, buying the weak bottle at the weak price, while the strong, real, wild root grows for free behind the house, and a whole trade is built on making sure he never connects those two facts. That is the part that ought to make you set your jaw a little. It does mine. Now, how did a humble little woods plant get to be worth more by weight than silver was in some years. Let me take you back, because the history is the proof. In 1784, just after this country won its freedom, the very first American ship to ever sail to China set out from New York. It was called the Empress of China. And do you know what filled its hold? Not cotton, not tobacco, ginseng. Roughly 30 tons of dried American ginseng root dug out of these eastern woods by ordinary people, traded across the whole ocean to China, where they had prized this root for centuries and had nearly dug their own supply to nothing. That single voyage came home with a fortune, and it started a trade that has never once stopped in all the years since. Daniel Boone, the man every schoolboy used to know, made more money some years digging and trading ginseng than he ever made hunting or guiding. There are records of him floating tons of it down the rivers. George Washington wrote in his own journal about passing mountain folk on the trail, their horses loaded down with ginseng they had gathered. So this is not a fad. This is not some new internet trick. This is one of the oldest cash crops on this whole continent. And the plain people, the mountain people, the ones the modern world likes to call backward, we just kept doing it after everybody else forgot. Now let me tell you why the root is worth so much. Because once you understand the why, you will understand everything else, including that 10-second test I promised you. This plant is in no hurry. None at all. A stalk of corn goes from a seed to a tall green plant in a single summer. A tomato will feed you in 90 days. But ginseng does not think in seasons, it thinks in decades. In its first year, a ginseng plant puts up one tiny stem with 3 little leaves, no bigger than a clover. That is all. The second year, it might show a single group of 5 leaves on one prong. It takes its sweet time. It does not even make a seed until it is 3 or 4 years old. And the root, the part the whole world wants, it grows so slowly, swelling just a little each year, that a root the size of your finger could easily be 10 years old. Some of the big old roots dug from deep woods have been counted at 40, 50, even 70 years of age. Here is the science the outside world finally caught up to, the part that confirms what the old diggers always knew in their hands. The slow growth is exactly what makes the root strong. Because it grows so slow, in poor cool soil, in deep shade, it spends decade after decade packing its root with the active compounds, the ones the researchers call ginsenicides. Those are the things the body responds to. The fast farm plants grown in 2 or 3 years under shade cloth simply do not have time to build that strength. Slow woods, strong root. Fast farm, weak root. The market knows it, and that is the whole reason the wild root commands the high price while the bottle on the shelf does not. Now you see why the price holds. You cannot rush it. You cannot factory it. A buyer who finds true wild root from an old hardwood slope knows he is holding something that took longer to make than a child takes to grow up. But that slowness is also exactly why a dozen states stepped in. Here is where I have to be honest with you about the law, and then I am going to leave the law alone because the law is not the real villain in this story. Because ginseng grows so slowly and got dug so heavily for so long, the states that care about it made rules. In 1975, American ginseng was placed on an international protection list, the same kind of list used to watch over animals that are getting scarce. After that, most of the states where it grows set a digging season, usually starting the 1st of September and running into late fall, and only then they set a rule that you cannot dig a young plant. In many states, the plant must be at least 5 years old, showing at least 3 prongs of leaves with ripe red berries before you may legally take it. And several states, more than a handful, simply do not allow wild digging at all anymore, or only on your own private land with permission, or not on any public ground. So yes, in roughly a dozen states, it is flatly illegal to walk into the woods and pick this season or no season. In others, it is perfectly legal if you follow the season and the size rule and you do the one thing every honest digger does, which I will come to. But understand me, the states did not make these rules to keep you poor. They made them to keep the plant alive so it would still be here for your grandchildren. That is good stewardship, and I have no quarrel with it. We do not take what we cannot replace. That is the plain way. The real villain is not the game warden. The real villain is the company that sells you a weak bottle for $40 and lets you believe that bottle is the only way an old body can get this old strength. They are happy for you to think it is rare and far away and complicated. Every dollar of their business depends on you not knowing it grows behind your house. So let me start handing you what they would rather you never had. Let me teach you to find it. Because most folks who go looking fail for one simple reason. They look for the plant, and the plant, in a green summer woods, hides in plain sight among 1,000 other green things. The old diggers do not look for the plant first. They read the woods. Here is the first secret, and it is one I have never once seen on a store shelf or a supplement label. Ginseng keeps company. It will not grow just anywhere. It wants a north or east-facing slope, the cool, shady side of a hill, under tall, old hardwoods, sugar, maple, and basswood, and oak, and tulip poplar, where the dirt is dark and damp and loose with years of fallen leaves, but never soggy. And in that exact kind of spot, certain other plants grow too. We call them the indicator plants, the companions. Look for maidenhair fern, that delicate fan-shaped fern on a thin black stem. Look for jack-in-the-pulpit, that odd little hooded flower. Look for trillium, the three-leaf spring flower. Look for blue cohosh, for wild ginger, for the tall stalk of black cohosh. Where you find a patch of those growing together on a cool shaded slope, you are standing in ginseng ground. My grandfather did not look for sang, he looked for the ferns. He used to say the fern is the front porch, and the sang is sitting just inside the door. That right there, that one piece of knowledge, would save a man years of useless wandering. And nobody selling you a bottle will ever tell it to you because it costs them money for you to know it. Now, what does the plant itself look like once you are in the right ground? In the spring and summer, it stands maybe a foot, sometimes a foot and a half high. The leaves grow in groups, and each group has usually 5 leaflets, 2 small ones on the bottom, and 3 bigger ones spread out like the fingers of a hand. A young plant has one of those groups. We call that a 1-prong. An older plant splits and grows more, a 2-prong, a 3-prong, a 4-prong. Each cluster of 5 leaves is called a prong, and the prongs are how you read the age. More prongs, older plant, bigger root. And in the late summer, right around digging season, the plant gives you a gift to help you see it. In the center, where the prongs meet, it puts up a little cluster of berries. And those berries turn a bright, ripe red, a red that does not belong to much else on that shady ground. When the light is low and you are walking that north slope, your eye will catch that red before it catches anything else. The old men train their grandsons to spot the red first. Find the red berries, and you have found a plant old enough to matter. But here is where I have to slow you down, because this is the line between a digger who honors the woods and one who ruins it. You do not dig the young ones. A 1-prong or a small 2-prong plant is just a child. Its root is a thread. You would get nothing for it, and you would rob the woods of the big plant it would have become in 10 more years. The old rule, the plain rule, the same rule the states later wrote into law, is this. You only dig a plant with at least 3 prongs and ripe red berries. 3 prongs means it is generally at least 5 years old. The berries mean it has made its seed. And then, before you ever pick up the root and walk away, you take those red berries and you push them into the soft dirt right there, an inch deep, where the parent plant stood. That is the whole secret of why the plain people still have ginseng when so many others dug their woods bare. We always planted the seed back, every single time. You take the old, you leave the young, and you plant the next crop with your own thumb before you go. My grandfather would not let me leave a spot until I had pressed every berry into the ground. He said, a man who takes without planting is not a digger, he is a thief, and the woods remember thieves. Now stay with me, because I promised you the 10-second test, and here it is. And this is the part that separates a $4 handful from a $40 root, and almost nobody outside the old families knows it. When you ease a ginseng root up out of the ground, gentle, with a stick, not yanking, so you keep all the little fingers and hairs whole, you will see something at the very top of the root. Right where the root meets the green stem, there is a thin curved neck, almost like a little stack of knuckles. We call it the rhizome, but the diggers just call it the neck. And on that neck are scars, little rings, little dimples, one after another, climbing up the neck. Here is the wonder of it. Every single year, when the green top dies back in the fall, it leaves one scar on that neck. One stem, 1 year, one scar. Just exactly like the rings inside a cut tree. So if you take that root and you tip your reading glasses down and you count the scars on the neck, you are counting the years that plant has been alive. Count 5 scars, you have a 5-year-old root. Count 12 scars, you are holding 12 years of slow woods growth. Count 30. And friend, you have found something the buyers will fight over, because a wild root that old, with a long scarred neck and a body shaped like a little man with arms and legs, that is the prize of the whole trade. The Chinese buyers prize a long, old, well-shaped wild root above almost anything, and the neck scars are the proof of age they look for first. This is how you know, in about 10 seconds, with your own eyes, whether you have a common little root worth a few dollars green or an old treasure worth real money. No bottle, no label, no salesman. Just you, the root, and the count. The supplement companies grind all of this into a faceless powder precisely so you can never tell the slow old wild strength from the fast cheap farm stuff. The neck scars give it away. That is why you have never heard of them. Now I can almost hear some of you thinking, that is fine for a man with deep woods. But I have a regular yard, an older home, a few shade trees, a garden that is already planted and done. This is not for me. Stay right there, because that is exactly wrong, and I want to fix it before you click away. You do not need a mountain, you need shade and patience. And if you have an older established place, you already have the hardest part, which is the trees. A young new built lot with 2 skinny saplings cannot do this, but an older home with mature hardwoods on the north or east side of the house, with that cool, dim ground underneath where the grass always struggles and the moss likes to grow, that struggling shady strip you've been fighting with for years, that is not a problem patch. That is ginseng ground sitting empty. Here is what you can do this very weekend with nothing but your hands and a rake. Go to that shady north or east side of your trees. Find where the soil is dark and crumbly and holds a little moisture, where leaves pile up and rot down soft, never where water stands. Rake back the leaf litter to bare the dirt. Now, if you can get true stratified ginseng seed, the kind that has already been held through a season so it is ready to sprout, you simply scatter it thin, press it down, and rake that leaf litter right back over the top like a blanket. That is it. No tilling, no fertilizer, no watering can. The leaves are the only cover it wants. You are not gardening. You are putting the plant back where God always meant it to grow and then leaving it alone. The old hands call this wild simulated growing. You are not farming ginseng. You are seeding the woods and walking away, letting it grow slow and strong and wild, exactly like the high-priced root, because to a buyer, that is what it becomes. This is the very method the land-grant universities now teach. Penn State Extension and the folks at West Virginia University both put out guides on wild simulated ginseng, and they will tell you the same thing the plain people have always done. Low cost, no equipment, plant it in the fall under your existing shade and let the years do the work. Now, I will be straight with you about the catch, because I do not sell you fairy tales. The catch is time. Seed you plant this fall will not be a digging-sized root for about 7 to 10 years. That is the toll this plant charges everyone, the company, and the digger alike. It cannot be cheated. But hear me, those years are going to pass anyway. They will pass whether or not there is anything growing under those trees. A man who is 62 this autumn, who scatters a little seed on his shady slope this weekend, can be walking out at 70-some to dig roots worth more by the ounce than anything else on his land, in a spot that grew nothing but moss and complaint before. My grandfather planted patches he knew full well he might never dig himself. He planted them for my father planted for me. That is the plainest kind of wealth there is. You put it in the ground for the ones who come after, and some of it ripens in time for you too. And every one of those years, the bottle on the store shelf will have cost you $40 again and again and again, while the free strong root grew quietly in your own shade. Add that up over 10 years. That is hundreds of dollars handed to a company for the weak version of a thing you could have grown for the price of a packet of seed. If this kind of knowledge is what you are hungry for, I put a great deal more of it into writing in a pair of field guides called the Garden Blueprint and the Harvest Blueprint, which together make up the Complete Garden Field Edition. They cover old-fashioned pest cures that cost pennies, Amish soil and storage secrets for bigger yields, and the kind of plain, practical knowledge that used to be passed down at the kitchen table before the modern world decided to sell it back to us by the bottle. You can find the link in the description, and everything in those pages is the same straight talk you are hearing right now, nothing held back. Now let me give you the rest of the digging knowledge. For those of you in a state and a season where you may legally gather, or for those years down the road when your own planted patch comes of age, you dig in the fall, after the berries go red, when the tops are just beginning to yellow, there is good reason for the season beyond the law. By fall, the plant has pulled all its strength down into the root for the winter, so the root is at its richest, and the berries are ripe and ready to replant. Dig in the spring, and you get a weaker root and no seed to put back. Fall is right. The old people knew it before any rule was written. You do not use a shovel like you are digging a post hole. You use a narrow tool, a digging stick, or a slim fork, and you work the soil loose all around the plant, well back from the root, and you tease it up whole. The little branching fingers and the fine hairy rootlets are part of the value. A root that looks like a tiny person with a body and arms and legs and a long scarred neck is worth far more than a chopped or broken one. Patience in the digging is patience in the pay. Then comes the part that decides half your money, and the company would love for you to get it wrong. You do not scrub the root. People think they should wash it bright and clean like a carrot. No. You rinse it gentle, just knocking off the loose dirt, but you leave the skin and the natural color and the little rings on the body. Those rings and that aged skin are what tells a buyer it is true old wild root and not farmed. Scrub it shiny, and you have scrubbed the value right off, and you dry it slow. This is the last secret, and it is where so many beginners ruin a whole season's dig. You lay the roots out in a single layer in a warm, airy room out of the sun, somewhere around the warmth of a comfortable house, and you let them dry slowly over days, even a couple of weeks for the big ones, turning them now and then. Dry it too fast or too hot, and the root cooks and darkens inside and loses worth. Dry it slow and patient, and it cures down hard, with the inside staying the right pale color, and it can keep for years. Fresh green root sells for one price, often around that $40 a pound. But dried, where it takes about 3 pounds of fresh root to make 1 pound of dry, that dried pound can bring several $100s, sometimes far more for old, well-shaped wild root. The drying is where a patient man doubles or triples his money in his own spare room with no equipment but a window screen and time, slow to grow, slow to dry. The whole plant rewards the patient and punishes the hasty, which is perhaps why it sits so easy with the plain way of living, and so poorly with a world that wants everything in a bottle by Tuesday. Let me gather up the worth of all this, because I want you to feel what is actually in your hands now. There is a native plant. It grows free in the cool shade of older American woods and older American yards all through the eastern half of this country. It built fortunes before this nation could even pave a road. It is so prized that a single old root can be worth more than a day's wages, and it has been protected by law in many states precisely because it is so valuable that people dug it nearly to nothing. And a whole modern industry takes a weaker, faster, farmed shadow of this very plant, grinds it to powder, and sells it back to tired older folks for $40 a bottle, banking entirely on the fact that almost nobody remembers it, grows wild and free. But the plain people remembered. We never stopped reading the ferns, counting the prongs, planting the red berries back with our thumbs, counting the scars on the neck, drying the roots slow in the spare room. We kept it because it would have been a sin to let it be forgotten. And now you have it too. You can find it by its companions. You can age it in 10 seconds by the scars on its neck. You can plant it this weekend in the shady strip you always cursed, with nothing but a rake and a handful of seed, and hand a small fortune to yourself in 10 years and to your grandchildren after that. You never needed the bottle. You needed the woods, and the woods were yours the whole time. That is the thing they quietly took from you, not the plant, the knowing that you were never as dependent as they wanted you to feel. You are the kind of person who would rather grow it free in honest dirt than keep paying a stranger for the weak version of what nature already set at your back door. That is not being cheap, that is being free. And freedom from being sold to is the oldest kind of wealth my people ever kept. So here is what I ask of you, plain and direct, because I have learned this audience likes to be asked straight. Go down to the comments right now and tell me your state. Just the state. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, the Carolinas, New York, wherever you are. I want to see where you all are sitting, because the season and the rules are different in every one, and I read these. Tell me your state, and tell me this too. Do you have a north-facing shady slope on your land, or only a flat sunny yard? That one answer changes what you can do, and I may just point a few of you in the right direction. And if you want more of this, the old plain knowledge the modern world buried so it could sell it back to you, then come walk with us. Do not think of it as following a channel. Think of it as joining a table of folks who refuse to keep overpaying for what nature and the old ways already give away for free. Because next time I am going to show you another one. There is a common roadside weed, the kind the highway crews mow down by the mile, that the old women in my community dried and kept in a jar by the stove all winter, and used for a thing most people today still buy at the pharmacy for far too much. Most folks would not give it a second glance. You have walked past it your whole life. I will show you how to know it, when to gather it, and the one part of the plant most people throw away that holds nearly all the worth. Watch your shady ground this fall. Look for the red berries, and remember, the woods were never the strangers to sell. They were always yours. I'm Eli. This video gave you the overview, but inside the Amish field circle, I pick up right where we left off and walk you through the whole season-long saying harvest, route to sale. In there, you can ask me your own question, and I answer you myself. A real person, not some machine. You won't be doing this alone. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel anytime, one click. If something here surprised you, I have many more old Amish secrets like this waiting for you. Subscribe and stay close, because there's plenty more right here to help you.